Hi guys, it's Ashley from Seeking Witchcraft. Today I have Azaizall here with me, who you may recognize from the Misconceptions in Wicca episode. He was also in the Baby Witches episode. So you may also recognize Azaizall from his new podcast, Feast of Torches, where I was recently on. We did a 2-hour uncensored witches and wine type episode. So it was a lot of wine, a lot of uncensored conversation, and a lot of fun. So if you haven't listened to that episode already or checked out his podcast, I definitely recommend looking it up. Again, it is called Feast of Torches. And if you guys listen to that Witches and Wine episode, by the way, let me know how you like it. He's actually here today to talk about incense. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I love incense. And there's more to it than just smelling good. So he's going to speak about that. And he's also going to give a recipe on how to make an incense blend that you can do at home. So, Azaizall, I know you've been on before, but please feel free to introduce yourself, especially to people who may have never heard from you before.
Hi guys, I'm Azazel. Like Ashley was saying, I've been on the podcast before, but I am a Gardnerian high priest, and I've been practicing the craft for about 15 years now, and I've somehow learned a variety of things, even though I feel like I still know nothing. It's the mysteries of witchcraft. There's so much to learn.
Oh gosh, it's never ending. And for a fun fact, so for those who are on the Facebook group, which is Seeking Witchcraft, you will also recognize him as one of the moderators.
Yeah, on the moderate, I also go by Justin is my actual name, but I've literally been using Azazel since I started practicing the craft, so that's usually the name that really, I guess, has tied with me. I more go by Azazel than I do Justin, so it's weird to hear people call me Justin. But yeah.
Yeah, and so if you're interested in looking at his podcast, we'll talk a little bit about it later because we are going to talk about incense, but his name is spelled Azaizall. So it's a little bit of a different spelling than the other Azazel, which you might recognize from some text. But that's a whole different topic for another show. All right. So, Azazel, do you want to just dive right into incense?
Sure.
Cool. Let's do it.
So, I mean, I got into incense in a very basic way. I'm a Taurus, and obviously Taurus is an earth sign. And so I wanted to, get more in touch with my earthy vibes. And so I started looking more into herbs and the properties of herbs and how herbs are used. And what really fascinated me was, I guess, the more I learned about the herbs, it was more than just like their correspondences. And there's actual spirits that you can communicate with through the herbs, and learning how they mix well together. Two herbs can be like have like a mercurial type of feeling or association, but that doesn't necessarily mean they work well together. It also depends when it comes to incense specifically. There's a variety of like toxicities that can go into there, and so you really have to be careful with what you're mixing together. It's like a little potion, but you don't want to kill anybody. And so yeah, it can be very harmful if you don't really know what you're doing. So I wouldn't recommend just, go with your intuition and just pack whatever in your incense blends that you want to definitely recommend to like heavily research the herbs that you're using, whether they can be ingested in the a form of like smoke, because like there's some herbs, there's some things that you can eat, but whether if you smoke them or if you light them on fire or what have you, they can become their level of toxicity changes. Garlic, we had a fun instance where one of the people in my group, they decided to make an incense for the ritual, and she decided to put garlic in there, thinking nothing of it. Everybody eats garlic. And besides, making the room smell like an Italian restaurant, we all started to slowly choke to death because there was not that much ventilation in the room. So also that's a key thing you always want to make sure you have. Open up a window or have something to let the smoke go out a little bit. But yeah, like garlic in that sense, when it's burned in that way, can be very overpowering. And so yeah, it can get dangerous, even though you may think that it's a commonly used herb or plant, doesn't necessarily make it okay for you to light it on fire.
It's really important too, if you're going to make an incense blend, to not only check the toxicity for yourself, but also for any pets that you may have around.
Yes, for sure.
So it's kind of in the same way. I know a lot of people, especially if they have birds, they won't burn certain type of candles because that's very toxic for them. Make sure whatever you're burning is safe. If you have a cat, if you have a dog, if you have a goldfish, like just anything that's going to be in the room or that may have a chance of inhaling the smoke that you have, please, please, please make sure it's okay to burn around them. And Unfortunately, you'll find a lot of herbs are not safe to burn around animals, and I found that out myself when I first tried to make my own incense blend, and I was very upset because then I had to go outside with it, which was not as fun as smoking out my entire basement. But I care about my cats, so it was fine.
Yeah, I mean, also with like in that same mindset, if you're gonna have other people in the room, make sure you make them aware of what you put in there because, they may have some allergy to whatever plant that is, and going unknowingly, you may accidentally, put them into like some sort of shock, and that's never fun, especially in the middle of a ritual. So yeah, always look up the toxicity levels of these herbs that you're working with. I've always found it a good, whenever I'm making a label for, because I have a plethora of jars everywhere.
That's how you know you're a witch.
Yeah, and they're usually filled with like a variety of different herbs. So whenever I'll write down the name of the herb, just put down like slightly toxic or not toxic at all, or highly toxic, like use very little of it. Because you can include certain herbs in there that may be toxic as long as you use them very mildly. Or if you have other herbs in there that are not toxic that can overpower the toxicity of the one herb that you do want to use, because it may have something like if you're making an instance for a specific deity and you know that this herb was intrinsic to working with this deity from based on their history or based on the culture that they come from, but it is very toxic. You can just include like a little bit of it, and so it has that essence of that herb along with a variety of other things that you include in there. But yeah, like historically, herbs have been used for I think as long as religion has been around. Well, incense has been used as long as religion has been around. Whenever people are honoring specific deities, because incense itself is a type of offering to those deities. And there's something that I use it especially for whenever Mercury is going into retrograde. I always whip up my Mercury incense and give that as an offering to like, please, don't fuck up my life right now. I have a lot going on. Just please let this go as smoothly as possible. And for the most part, it's never really been an issue when I do
I love when Mercury is in Gatorade, you know.
that. That's a funny way to put it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I remember when I was before I got initiated into anything, I went to a pagan pride day and they had a workshop. And one of the things they were talking about in the workshop, and this is actually something I talk about in the Antigen episode with Eric, is about how incense is technically a drug. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, it can definitely be a drug. Like I was saying earlier, with the being paying attention to the toxicity of certain herbs, it can help you get into certain trance-like states depending on how you use it. I know that there was a specific time when I was learning myself about making incense that I had made a specific blend to Odin and not thinking about you know looking up. This is really what taught me how to look up the properties of these herbs and how they can affect you, because I think I had added in like a bunch of mugwort and a couple of other things that didn't
Oof.
mix well together when
Jeez.
two or three herbs have very high toxicity levels, and
How was
I
that?
it so I didn't know how it would affect me like that because me not thinking about it, I think it's just like it's just smoke, whatever. Like I light incense sticks all the time. It's never an issue. And so I had it in my living room, but the problem was is that my face was right in front of the the incense burner,
Oh no.
and so I was literally just breathing that all in, and then within like a matter of five
Oh
minutes, I'm
god.
like, I am super lightheaded right now. Like, am I high? It felt like I was high.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and so definitely pay attention to that. And if you are going to use those things, especially stuff that does contain very highly toxic things, if it's an outside ritual, for the most part, it's going to be fine. It's not an enclosed space where people are constantly inhaling these fumes. But if you're in an enclosed space, it's definitely something you should pay attention to.
We're not responsible if you're inhaling toxic fumes of things that you probably shouldn't be inhaling. Yeah, be smart, be cautious, and think before you act.
Yes, yeah. Herbs are stuff that they mix it together and they make pills out of it. That's the core thing that goes into all of these like Advil. So they have been used for like hundreds of years in a variety of different ways. You just really have to pay attention to what exactly you're allowing to be inhaled into your body, and look up for yourself because like you don't want to accidentally put yourself into anaphylactic shock, 'cause that's never fun, especially if you're by yourself and nobody can help you.
Yeah.
But incense itself has been an interesting journey for me because I think it's really helped me pay attention to what exactly it is that I'm calling upon. Because it's not just like, oh, I want this deity to help me with this spell. It's like I'm putting forth this effort to really understand the history of this entity that I'm calling upon and how these herbs are attributed to them. And for the most part, a variety of it works like that in a variety of different cultures. There were specific smells that they would use. Like I know in a lot of Catholic churches they burn frankincense and myrrh. That's a common church incense that is used during like a Catholic mass. In a lot of ceremonial magic, frankincense and myrrh is used for specific, working with specific entities and just as a protection for whatever it is that you're calling upon. It may not be helpful for you. It may not be beneficial to the entity that you're calling upon. And so, you want to have those extra layers of protection in the sense of this smell that is permeating through the room because it does. I feel like for me, I do believe that the powers of the incense does transcend through the astral plane or whatever, because that is essentially what we're using to call them forth and bring them to lure them to our circle space, whether it's a matter of like elementals or demons or angels or gods. We're using that as a type of perfume because like even like when you put on cologne and you're trying to attract this girl or this guy, you're trying to sweeten yourself up for that. It's the same sense in when you're doing ritual. You're using this incense for the specific purpose of the ritual, but also to sweeten up these entities and sweeten up and have them want to join your circle. It's like, hey, it smells good over there. Let me pop on over there and see what they're all about. You know?
Yeah, there's two things I want to say. The first, I want to back up a little bit. So you had mentioned kind of just using incense to kind of try to get into that trance state. And I think that's such an important thing that cannot be talked about enough is having a ritual mindset and having triggers for that. So I'll give an example. For us in my coven, we tend to use this one incense kind of often, and I really like it. I love the smell of it. Whenever we like start burning it, I'm just like, "Oh, yay, like coven time." And the other day when I saw my coven, I asked if I could have some of the incense that we burn because I have like a little holder and I wanted to put incense in there. So I was given some, and then once my coven left and all that, I was home and was like, I'm going to burn some incense. So I got a coal and started burning some of the incense that my high priest gave me, and I was just like, what's happening right now? And then I realized, it is one of those triggers of like getting into a ritual mindset, getting into that zone and that space. And it's that specific type of incense that we have that really helped do that for me. And so I was like, well, okay, well, I have other incense. Let me burn that instead because I'm not trying to trance out of my kitchen right now as I'm like making bath bombs. Yeah, yeah, fun story. Uh, the second thing I wanted to say was about the smell of incense. I think a lot of people, especially if they're trying to make their own incense blend, and I want to point out too that we're talking about loose incense and we're talking about herbs and such. We're not necessarily talking about stick incense in this matter, which I know a lot of people, especially beginners, start out with. Just because it doesn't smell good to you doesn't mean that it's not useful or that it doesn't work.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think for a long time I used stick incense or cones was my main go-to whenever I did circle at my house. You're reading all these books that you have to have like a censer incense on the altar. But it wasn't really until I got into working with loose leaf incense and mashing it, going through the process of picking the herbs and mashing it together in my mortar and pestle with some resin and some oil and creating it myself from scratch that I really understood the point of it and like how it really can affect your ritual mindset like you were saying and can be that trigger, especially during times of this during times of COVID when you have that specific instance that you use for ritual for with your coven. It can really help you bring you back into that mindset whenever you're trying to do rituals by yourself and really feel like you're still in that space mentally and being able to connect to the people that aren't with you there physically. So yeah, that definitely is a big trigger that can be applied.
Yeah, and it's great to do that, especially if you have a group that you work with, or you have a coven, or even if you don't have a coven, say you just have some friends that you practice with. If you guys could all get together and say, hey, you know what? We're all home by ourselves during COVID and we can't see each other. So maybe let's all plan to do a circle casting at the same time. And, just so we kind of can connect in some sort of way, we'll use the same incense, the exact same blend, or even the same stick. Just trying to find little things that you can do in circle to connect yourself, even when you're not physically with these people.
Yeah, I mean, using stick incense isn't, bad. We all start off using stick incense. We all still use stick incenses. It's an easy go-to.
I have a whole drawer of stick incenses that I
You
burn
do.
all the
You have a
time,
plethora of stick incenses.
and they smell amazing. Okay.
They do, no, for sure. And especially, when you want to just make your house smell pretty. But yeah, like, using a specific just incense that's, just dragon's blood. That's perfectly okay. It doesn't have to be a mixture of these big things. I tend to go all out for it because that's become like a passion of mine. But like even if you have like just like stick incense with just like frankincense in it, it can still be helpful to whatever working it is that you're doing.
I just want to put out there on the record that my favorite stick incense is opium. I think it smells
Wow.
really good. And after this conversation, Azazel, I'm expecting some incense for Yule. So thanks for that.
I have a specific recipe that I use for you. So I can get
Ooh,
that to you. Um,
sounds good to me.
yeah, I know for the longest time, dragon's blood was my go-to for everything, and I do tend to put it in a lot of my intense blends if I can. Like if it's attributable to whatever working it is that I'm doing, I'll definitely add it. Because when it comes to making like a loose leaf incense, usually like I was saying earlier, like it includes a resin, the actual herbs, and then you have the oil, and you use the resin as a kind of it's what keeps it burning. So resin is like a type of kind of like sap that's put together. Usually you'll find frankincense, myrrh, dragon's blood, benzoin, copal. Copal I'll use a lot for just the purpose of like if I'm doing like some sort of conjuration, like if I'm working like with a spirit board or I'm specifically trying to call upon like, an entity, and like whenever I'm using my scrying mirror, because copal is really good for conjuration.
Do you happen to have just like a quick list or anything of what the other resins could be used for specifically if somebody's trying to make a blend?
Frankincense and myrrh, like again, they're really good for protection. Dragon's blood is I've used it a lot for if it's specifically like an offering, especially to more like chthonic entities, like darker entities like Hecate or Lilith or Hades or any of those types of beings. I'll usually use dragon's blood for that. Those are usually like my go-to resins that I use. Occasionally, I'll use a Three Kings resin, which is a mixture. I don't remember exactly what's in it. I know it's frankincense, myrrh, and I believe it's also benzoin. That they're all just like mashed together.
It's like this gold thing.
Yeah, typically they'll be like in different colors. I've seen the ones from the store that I got them from. They were like red, green, and something, but they were like little beads. But they were pretty much like mashed together of these different types of resins. And I'll usually use those whenever I'm doing any sort of like angelic working. But yeah,
You mentioned having a resin and then maybe having some herbs attached to that to make your loose incense. Would you recommend using dry or fresh herbs, or is there a difference? Does it matter?
I would definitely recommend using dry herbs better, just because one, it lasts longer. At the end of the day, whenever you're finished making the incense, always store them in very tightly sealed containers. Mason jars are great for that. Because if you're using fresh herbs, they can start rotting, and it's like you can't really use them that well. They also don't burn that well either. If you use resin by itself, it'll burn for a while, depending on how big of a piece you use. But can also, be a binding agent for the dry herbs that you're adding into it. And then the oil is more I tend to add the oil more for like the fragrance of whatever it is that I'm creating. Yeah, it's mostly for the fragrance, but also you want to make sure that it's still in tandem with the working that you're trying to do. They all have to work together for whatever it is that the working is.
Would you recommend using fragrance oil or essential oil, or does it matter?
Essential oil, no, definitely essential oil. Fragrance oil, I believe, has other types of like chemicals in it. Essential oil is more just like the pure oils of the herb itself mixed in with like some sort of base oil like olive oil or almond or jojoba oil. And those are also fun things that you can make yourselves. If you don't have the ability to light incense in if you're in like a dorm, or you don't want, I guess your parents don't like you smelling up the house or whatever. Making oils, it can be an easy way of counteracting that. It's the same. It's in the sense the same essence, except you're not using resin, and you're still using the dried herb. And instead of like having to light the incense itself on like a piece of charcoal, you can rub the oil in like a candle or whatever it is that you're doing, or rub it on your hands, or anoint yourself with that oil can be very helpful as well. Because I know a lot of I have heard a lot of questions about people, oh, I can't burn incense or I can't burn sage or whatever. But yeah, also something that was mentioned on the page that I know not everybody's in the Facebook group page. Somebody mentioned smudging and in the same like sentence with like cleansing, and those two are two very different things. Smudging is a Native American ceremony that they use. I'm honestly not 100% sure what they use it for. I know it's a type of cleansing, but just because it's not really my culture, and I don't really feel it's appropriate to bring that into my practice, as I don't really have anything to do with it. Cleansing is a completely separate thing, and you can use a variety of things for cleansing. That's not just sage. Sage has become like this big, I guess, trend that for everybody using whenever they want to do a cleansing. But there are a variety of other things that you can use besides sage. Going back to the frankincense and myrrh and Florida water, if you're not able to burn anything, Florida water is a great alternative for sage.
Florida water is not water you get from Florida, by the way. It's
Yes,
an
that
actual
is
thing.
also something. Yeah, that's definitely been something somebody has asked me before because I used to live in Florida, and it's like, oh, I'll just get water from the ocean. It's like that's not the same thing.
I mean, it is
There's a rest. Yeah, it
it
is
is
technically,
it is technically Florida
Florida
water,
water.
but it's not Florida water.
It's not. Yeah. No. You can get Florida water from like any type of grocery store. Typically, it'll be like in the grandma section. I'll have it next to like some sort of like flowery cologne. And yeah, it's a great alternative for using. You could I believe that there are some recipes online for making your own Florida water. I believe it's just some essential oils and a bit of like alcohol as like the base, which is another thing that you can use. I've definitely used Florida water and like lit it on fire because it is an alcohol base, and it'll light and it'll burn the alcohol away, and then it'll just stop burning. But it definitely smells amazing when you do it.
I could just like imagine you. Have you seen that meme, Elmo, and just the world's on fire behind him? It's like a GIF.
Yeah,
I could just imagine you in your house throwing this stuff on the floor and then just burning it up, just to see the smoke and be like, hey, hey, hey. Like,
yeah, definitely. Be careful with that as well, because like I've almost done that where I put it in a bowl and then like lit it on fire and then almost tipped the bowl over because obviously this bowl is filled with water, and so if it spreads and it's lit on fire, it's not going to be fun for you.
why? Like, I just see this image so vividly in my head right now. It's like it's almost as if I was there.
I mean, I've never done it, but
Uh huh.
it is a possibility of
It's
it happening.
it's a possibility.
Be careful when you light things on fire.
Yes, please be careful. Another thing, I think you actually mentioned this in the page too. And again, if you're wondering the Facebook group, it's Witches Seeking Witchcraft. You can put it in your floor washes. That's very popular.
Yes.
I want to say that if you have a Swiffer, you can probably like undo the Swiffer canister with like the cleaning liquid and pour it in there. Just an idea. Sometimes it's hard to get those things off because they're not really meant to come off, but
Yeah, I mean, you just put little droplets on the edge of it. It's in a sense, not incense. I've been saying incense too much. Um, in a
incense.
sense, is you're just like adding, droplets of the Florida water or what have you to it have that essence that you're adding to whatever it is that you're doing. So, like I was saying on the Facebook group, add a little bit of Florida water to the water that you use to mop your floors, and to create a sense of like protection around your house if you don't want to sage the whole place. That's definitely something that I've used in the past, and it makes your smell great.
I don't know why, but my brain just started thinking of Flo Rida, like the musician.
I gotta say, it definitely took me a long time to realize that his name was actually Florida. Way
Wow.
too long. I was a child, for the record.
We were the exact same age.
I know. Okay, so we were children, but I was living in Florida at the time, and it took me way too long to realize that his name was actually Florida. I
Shame.
never. Yeah.
You were doing all of us a disservice by saying that statement.
I mean, honestly, I hated it there, so I'm glad to be out.
That's fair. Anyway, so Flo Rida in Florida aside, and in what is it, incense and any sense aside, what is an incense blend that somebody could make at home?
In a sense, one that somebody can make at home. I tell you guys this one because it's super useful, and Mercury goes into retrograde so many times throughout the year. So this is my recipe for Mercury incense. Also, it's the same recipe that I use whenever working with the Archangel Raphael. So it's really simple. It's rose. So if you want to like get any type of like if you want to get roses from the store and dry them up and then crush them together with caraway, lavender, lemongrass, majoram, and lavender oil. And then you can add any sort of resin to this. Typically, I'll use a copal for this because I'm trying to conjure them up and ask them to please, please don't fuck my life up because I know we all struggle through Mercury retrogrades. Mercury Gatorades, as Ashley calls them. But yeah, it's rose, caraway, lavender, lemongrass, majoram, and then lavender oil.
And then I just want to throw this out there for people. So I've tried making stick incense before. I wish that it turned out correctly when I did it, and it did not. But I was using real essential oils. And most people, when they make incense, especially in large batches, they use fragrance oils because they can get a lot more of it for a lot less money. So I guess I didn't use enough essential oils. But if anybody's interested in making stick incense, it's super easy. All you have to do is you can buy blank sticks on Amazon. So they're unscented and you get those in the mail. And then you have to mix together the essential oil. And then there's like this chemical that goes with it. I think it's called DPG or something like that. And you mix those two together and then you just cover up the sticks and you leave them for 24 hours. And then you come back and you turn them over, you leave them for another 24 hours or so. And then you let them dry and then you burn them and hope that they smell good. Unfortunately, when I did it, I don't know what it is. They smelled like a straight up campfire. It was not good. I mean, I like campfires, but I don't want my living room to smell like a campfire, you know? So that's one way to make your own stick incense, but maybe get some fragrance oil if you guys are going to do it. Don't waste your essential oils on them. It did not work out for me.
Especially because essential oils are expensive as
Yes, they are very expensive. And one thing I want to point out that Azazel mentioned is that if you can't burn incense, you know, you can make essential oil blends. So I've been making bath bombs on the side. I think I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but I'm thinking about having like an Etsy shop where I sell them. I hand make them here in my home. And my whole thought with them is kind of think of it like preloaded spell bombs. Oh, that sounds weird. But like preloaded spell bath bombs with essential oil blends that are meant to help achieve different states or different whatever that you want. I'm still working on it. It's still a work in progress. I sent some to Azazel and Tiana from the Misconceptions episodes that they're going to test it out for me and let me know how it goes. But it's definitely been a process, especially because I am using real essential oils. I don't have any fragrance oils. So it's a little expensive at times, but it's been kind of a fun process to put all these oil blends together and try to make something out of it that you can just, you know, drop in a bathtub and it's kind of like a potion, except you're the ingredient.
yeah, that's definitely a great idea, and I can't wait to get them because I'm expecting my skin to be silky smooth afterwards, on top of whatever spell work you did in there.
Oh, yeah.
What work was it for? Like protection?
Yeah. So there was like I think like a protection one, there was like an energy raising one. There was one that I'm just calling whole ass man because it just smells like a whole ass man. Like I don't know how else to explain this scent. It just
Can't wait to get that one.
yeah, I want to come up with like a better name instead of whole ass man. I was thinking like maybe like the god or like I don't know, the god of like the forest or some like aesthetically pleasing name, but no, just whole ass man for now. We'll see. I'm gonna have to get their feedback on what they think of that anyway.
But yeah, I mean, definitely there's a variety of things you can do with like, herbs besides making incense and bath bombs. Like Ashley was saying, you can make your own like incense cones, which I still am trying to master, and incense sticks. But it's definitely like at some point I do want to set up my own Etsy shop and sell my incense blends because I have like a variety, I have a lot of just blends that I've made over the past couple of years. And I also make like these little intricate boxes for them. I'm sure if you follow me on Instagram, you can see a couple of them that I've made. I know for my Mercury one, I put in like the Mercury chimea attached to it, along with the symbol for Mercury on it, and I gave that to one of my students for her birthday, and she's used it and she's loved it. So I can't wait for you guys to try that out and definitely give me some feedback on that. I want to see how the rest of the community feels about that.
Yep, I feel you. Yeah, I'm definitely needing some feedback on these bath bombs. So, any closing thoughts on incense?
Just again, make sure you look up the toxicity levels. I don't want any of you to hurt yourselves doing this. It is a fun, experiment to try out, but do a lot of research on the herbs that you're using. Don't just pick stuff out of the cabinet.
Absolutely. So cool. So the next thing we're going to talk about really quick is Azazel has a new podcast coming out. Do you want to talk a little bit about, what it's called and what you're going to be chatting about?
Yes, so the podcast is going to be called Feast of Torches. So this is because like I was initiated on at Imbolc, and it is a time of it's a fire festival, and I do love me some fire, which again is what led me to incense because I like burning things. Also, I'm one of the topics that I do plan on talking about is Hecate and like my experiences with her. Other ideas that I have planned out are something that doesn't really get talked about a lot is men in the craft. We have been there, and I know a lot of people. I definitely had a lot of arguments with people, especially on Tumblr, trying to exclude men from practicing witchcraft, even though we've been there for literally ever. And trying to get men more excited about being in the craft. Especially Wicca, it is very, it does come off as very female centric, but it is for sure 100% a balanced religion where we focus on not only the feminine but also the masculine as well. And I wish more men would really get into that into that sense. I also plan on talking about banishing and the portion of doing banishings before you do any cleansing, and I do want it to be more talking about like the history of the craft. It's a big passion of mine, and how how the past has really affected how we work today, and even how we work today, how a lot of people tend to wish wash with the past and just do whatever they want, which is great too. There's benefits to all aspects of magic. But yeah, there's a little tidbits of what I plan on talking about.
Azazel is very knowledgeable. As he mentioned, he's been doing this for a lot longer than I have. So he has a lot of information to share.
I also want to apologize, guys. I know there's a lot of background noise, but my house has a couple people in it, and so I just wanted to. This is the only quiet place that I can have was outside, and now there's lots of background noise. So I just want to apologize about that.
Yeah, so I know Azazel was telling me he has some people visiting where he's at right now. So hopefully when he records this Feast of Torches episode, the background noise won't be the same that it is today. But at the same time, this is also one of the challenges of recording in the time of COVID when you can't see each other in person. Plus, also, Azazel lives like 6 hours away from me. So that wasn't going to really happen anyway. Okay, so do you want to tell people how they can find you?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Facebook under Justin Robles, or on Instagram as Azaizall, Aziaizall. I have another page on Instagram for my photography, Hoof and Horn Photography, and then I will be creating some pages for the podcast specifically, and so look out for that.
And I'll update the episode description with his information on his different pages. And you have a Discord server that you mod on too, right?
I do. We do have a British traditional witchcraft server that I do mod, and it's for seekers and people just interested in the craft. We have a variety of people there. There's Mosian, we have some Alexandrians, Gardnerians, some CVW, which is Central Valley Wicca, which also has an interesting history with Gardnerian Wicca, and a couple other people in there. So yeah, check that out too. It's on Discord.
So what would people look up to find it?
Believe you can look out for. Actually, I don't think we have I think it's on Reddit. We have a Reddit page that promotes it, but I will talk to the other mods about getting a Facebook group together and putting out like an actual link. But if you look up on Reddit under Wicca or traditional witchcraft or Wicca, there is a link for it.
Cool. It sounds very secretive, and it reminds me just of witchcraft in general.
As it is.
As it is. All right, guys. Well, as always, you can find me on Facebook at Seeking Witchcraft Podcast, on Twitter at Seek Witchcraft, Instagram Seeking Witchcraft, Facebook group, which I've said a couple times on here, is which is Seeking Witchcraft. If you want to support the podcast, I definitely appreciate it, but it's not expected, but it's definitely appreciated. I have a Patreon. It's just patreon.com/Seeking Witchcraft. And yeah, that's pretty much all the places you can find me. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking about incense. And now I just want to burn a ton of incense in my house at this moment because of this talk.
Well, thank you for having me on. I hope you guys learned a lot. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. And well, again, I'm sorry for all the background noise. There was a bit of a storm here the other day, and everybody's just cutting down their trees because it's a bit of a mess everywhere.
Oh, poor trees. All right. Well, thanks so much again for listening, and I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye.